Hello and welcome back to Verde Broadcasting. It's quite late here, it's 9:30 at night, but not for you, because that's not how linear time works. You're in the future, and if that hasn't made you turn off, I don't know what will. Come back after the jump where we talk about James Gunn's Superman. Okay, so announced really quite some time ago that James Gunn, I think James Gunn is president of the DC division of essentially Warner Brothers, really, and DC, i.e. Warner, have kind of finally, after 12 years, really gotten a single creative mind and vision behind their DC projects, one way or another. And we're here to talk about that picture of Superman putting his shoes on. I mean, that's it, isn't it? Really, that's what this. Once again, Verde Broadcasting texting each other, going like, "Talk about Superman, yeah, right." You know, because there was a photograph released of is it David Corenswet?
Corenswet, which is sort of like it's
Corenswet.
Bouquet. You know, it's that bit like you know what I mean. It's Corenswet, not
right.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think, yeah. Okay, fine. What do you think about that?
Well,
okay, we've got all the energy of like a sort of really dejected married couple. Just like, what do you want for dinner? I don't care.
Cereal. Yeah. Well, my wife and I watched Hollywood, which was the series he's from, recently,
right,
which was quite good. I mean, it wasn't. I would say it's not quite as up there as something like, I'm trying to think what it's like The Offer, which is I think I saw.
Oh yeah, of course, which was
the Making of the Godfather thing. That's top tier for me. That's top.
It's kind of
top,
the Robert
top
Evans
draw.
type.
Yeah. But I don't know. But
ipso facto quid pro quo.
The point is.
God.
Sorry.
Right, anyway, election coming up.
Yeah. Not with that person, mercifully.
No.
But anyway, but yes, it was kind of, I would say it's adjacent to that. But he was perfectly good in it. I think he's a solid actor. Like, I mean, I don't know, he's more in the kind of, I'd say he's like Brandon Routh meets Henry Cavill in terms of just like his look and stuff. I don't know. That's the way I'd go for Superman. I don't know, but look, I mean, all we know is that he done a picture where he puts his boots on while there's a big eye killing everyone in the sky.
I do quite like when they do an in-costume teaser image. Like, I sort of liked when they released, Henry Cavill holding up the bank vault.
Well, having just been thrown into the bank vault.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. I like these
that
kind of
worked,
teaser images. I like. I kind of so I don't know David Corenswet. Like, I've never seen him in anything. Yeah. If you're saying to me they're rebooting Superman, and here is a 6-foot-something white guy with a cowlick, I'm going to go, cool. I'm going to assume you know what you're doing and wait for that to happen. So that's all good. I don't have the hugest opinion about the casting of him. I'm not a baby, so I don't want Henry Cavill to come back and for fucking Zack Snyder to get his job back, because I'm a grown man, and that's not how business decisions work. So I'm kind of, this looks cool. I think James Gunn is someone I like. I think he's made some things that I really don't like. I mean, I think like Super, I just thought was a really horrible, mean-spirited film. But then again, I loved Guardians of the Galaxy, and I particularly thought Peacemaker was fucking excellent. But which was very different in tone. I think what DC stuff has been missing for a long time, which we've talked about, is James Gunn brings a kind of lightness of touch and a kind of warmth, and maybe even a little bit of whimsy that I think a Superman story needs, instead of the kind of, it went down a very kind of grim, dark path, and it was kind of like this operatic kind of mythical thing, and there's a place for that, but not when you have to sit through it for 3 hours. So I quite like the idea of a a Superman film with the kind of Guardians tone to it, which accommodates the real madness of like DC's mythology and its kind of cosmic side is nuts. And all the Superman films really have been quite earthbound. You know, the Zack Snyder's Justice League touched on the bigger stuff. But yeah, I want Brainiac, and I want the Bottle City of Kandor, and I want a fucking dog, a flying dog, and you know, fuck it, let him fight Hercules. I don't care. Let's go nuts with Superman.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. What I find odd about the image they've released is it seems to lean into certain tropes that I thought we were done with, whilst at the same time trying to have its cake and eat it too.
Do you mean the look of the thing? The look of the...
Well, there's the look of the suit, and then there's the sort of what's going on in that image. And I don't want to get too... You know, I mean, I suppose, but we are supposed to pick it apart, aren't we? I mean, like marketing department, people sweat over these things, or Corenswet over these things, and
Nice.
and you kind of think, well, you all wanted this to be the first image we saw of Superman for this thing, and it's kind of like, you know, I'm a Christopher Reeve bummer, or whatever you want to call it.
Just to be clear, though, he is dead, and that's not
yes,
change.
yeah, and I don't mean that. I'm not a necrophile. I mean,
good to know.
Good to know. Yeah. At least not officially. But no, I'm no. But I do think that was on film the best to date interpretation of the character, and I think he got it when you hear him talk about it. He did a lot more, you know, deep diving into what that character would feel like. I mean, he was kind of like, he's the ultimate, you know, he's an immigrant, but the ultimate immigrant, and he feels a sense of gratitude for being given a home, and that's why he always feels grateful to give back. And all, you know, there's all sorts of stuff that's gone on in his head to get to the psychology of what a Superman would be like, so that when he's interacting with real world people and stuff, he has this larger than life quality, but this approachable quality, you know, all the amazing things that he did with that character. When he's punchy smashy angry man, or mopey dopey my girlfriend doesn't love me anymore,
I don't think that's not how I'm interpreting this image. Please finish, but I want to come I'll tell you how I please continue.
Right, I'm just saying that as a background to kind of my criteria for what a Superman should be. And there's so much about Superman. There's all that. There's all the embodiment of it, and the characterization, and the person playing it, and the scripting, and all that stuff. And that all has to be understood in a holistic way by everyone making it. But the costume does a lot of that too. And I have this massive problem with them making costumes that look like they're made of basketballs, that look like armor and shit. And it's like, it's Superman. And why does he need a fucking collar? Is it cold? Like, what? He's Superman. Like, you don't put Superman in like armor. This has to stop. I'm so fed up with it.
This is the new 52 thing, isn't it? Where it's like Kryptonian armor, and it's like, why? Like, I don't want to get. So one thing that I'm trying to resolve to do, because I'm very much 40 years old, is that looking at the costume, I was a bit like, the costume itself. I was like, it's the kind of thick armory thing, which I'm not really into. It's kind of beaten up. I hope he's got red pants. He would appear to. Hard to tell.
Seems like he does. But they did that with the Man of Steel one. They hid his crotch. In a shadow, and you're like, well, does he or doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I do think like the kind of... I just don't think you should fuck around with the Superman costume. And then the thing where it has to look like it's made of basketballs and stuff. Not really into that particularly. I'm looking this way because I keep looking at it. So that kind of thing, when I saw it, I was a bit like, yeah. However, I think my interpretation of the image is, I think we're getting the lighter tone. I mean, it can't get any grimmer than the most recent interpretation. Let's face it.
Well, you say that, but that doesn't. I mean, that image does not look light to me. I know it's sort of got the bonkers thing in the big lasery eye. And again, did we not learn anything from from Suicide? Which was the first one? Suicide Squad.
The first one is just Suicide Squad, yeah.
That was just a big laser in the sky. You know, we went through this period of just big lasers in the sky, and it's kind of like...
I will freely admit, the big laser in the sky. What the tone of this image suggests to me is the reason... Because there's fucking all these internet psychos just going like, he's putting his shoes on, that's a feminine sign of weakness. And like all these people who've never had sex just put like madness. Like, what the image says to me it feels a little bit like that lovely Frank Whiteley All-Star Superman image of him just sat on the edge of the cliff. I think he's putting his boots on casually whilst that chaos ensues in the background because Superman is in control. And he's not rushing.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. I think the other way to look at it is, why does he need to take time to put his boots on? He's fucking Superman. Normally he just flies out the window and turns into Superman in midair. Like
yeah, but that's kind of, that like, because in Superman 2, he throws a cellophane S off his chest.
I know. No, I don't mean it quite literally like that, but he'd be changing so quickly we wouldn't even need to sit down. It's kind of a
humanising thing. I think we're trying to say this has a more human tone to it. That's what I think.
That's fair.
We are overanalyzing an image, which is kind of our job. I say job.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I kind
poorly
of
remunerated you.
Poorly remunerated. Yeah. I think what this is, because we've fallen into the trap of doing the thing that we're criticising, but like this image comes out and you've got loads of cunts on Twitter going like, they've used pink, that means that bring back Zack Snyder, and it's just like, nah man, they posed a publicity image, you can fucking get off your fucking high horse over it, don't overanalyze it. I kind of think, because it's part of a bigger plan for DCU, or no, the DCU it's now called, which they should have done in the first place, I think. But, this is not what we're getting first. There's I had to double check, but we're getting Creature Commandos on HBO Plus, whatever it's called. That's the first DCU project, so we're coming out with something low key. They appear to have made a plan that they're going to stick to, which is what they've been massively missing. They were so rudderless for so long, and I think the timing, we could be number of outcomes here. Marvel hasn't been good for a while, right? And it's like, well, DC is going to pick up the ball, and it's like, I think the ball is A, deflated, and B, covered in dog shit.
I think the ball is what his suit is made of. And I'm not sure what that means, but no, I agree.
I taught you a metaphor, but people, I'm saying like they could swoop in and be good, but it's entirely possible people just don't want this anymore and they're sick of it.
I just think it's. I know Superman is the superhero, right? It's the one, and you can't keep rejigging it like this. Or like, I just think, what are we gonna say? What's the And I look at that and I go, you've messed with it. Why have you messed with it? Unless you're going to say something really salient with that, and I don't think you can. Like, the S isn't an S; it's some sort of symbol. It's the Kingdom Come thing, right? So I get.
Yeah, it's like.
But then it's not. But then it's divorced from that context because that's about It's
not black.
Yeah. So like what does that mean? And that's what I mean. Are we just messing with things to sort of allude to stuff without?
I think that's difference for difference's sake, which is frustrating.
Yeah.
I think it's difference for the sake of being different. I am choosing to hope, and I reconfigured that as I said it. I'm choosing to hope that this, because what we've not had is a properly bananas Silver Age Batman film, and based on the way Gunn approached Marvel, like the Marvel stuff he done, it was all deep cuts, and it lent really hard into all the mad cosmic stuff, for better or for worse, comic accuracy, blah blah blah. But it lent it, and it made loads of kind of weird references, and it brought, like, putting in Howard the Duck and stuff like that, putting all this shit. I think him being someone knowledgeable, because he used, for example, in his Suicide Squad film, he used Starro. Starro is one of the big bananas, crazy Silver Age villains. It's a giant starfish from space, right? I think what we're getting, I'm choosing to hope that we're getting the big crazy Silver Age Superman film, which has never been touched on before. They've always been really kind of small and personal by comparison, or quite earthbound, for better or for worse. And I'm because I know they're doing like a Brave and the Bold film. All the slate they've announced for the DCU all sounds kind of mad, and I'm here for it. And I sort of think I want the good Superman reboot, basically. And also the other thing is that I which I'm really fucking pumped for. I think Nicholas Hoult's going to be a fucking amazing Lex Luthor. I think that's a brilliant choice for Lex, like a really brilliant choice. And I
think the casting is generally solid. Definitely. Who's? Because like Nathan.
Typing already.
Yeah.
I'm looking this up, everybody.
Yeah. Nathan, what's his face, isn't it? because he's in everything James Gunn, isn't he?
Let's have a wee look here. Nathan, what's his face?
Sorry,
I don't know.
you've got it in front of you.
What's his name? The enthusiasm boiling off of us as we speak. There's all these really annoying Reddit things. Rachel Brosnahan is Lois. She looks like Lois Lane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful that I've not really heard of these people, because I do think that's a plus.
Okay, so Definitely. Nathan Fillion is Guy Gardner.
Nathan Fillion, yeah, that I find weird. That's a weird. I thought he'd be like.
I'm in for it.
It's good casting.
Go weird. Go weird. Don't fucking do Hal Jordan. Don't do any of the obvious ones. Do Guy Gardner. I'm into that. And seeing the way he's handled other DC characters with these stunt casts, I'm like, yeah, fucking Guy Gardner. Put him in the fucking wonky jacket with the bowl cut if you like. I don't care.
That'd be cool.
I got to be honest. Like, looking at the rest of the cast, I haven't really heard of them, and that's a good thing. I'm into that. I kind of like that. You'll be happy to know that Skylar Gisondo is playing Jimmy Olsen. Alan Partridge. But Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, fucking 100% here for that. That's excellent. That was one of the things that I was really excited by. And I think, was he not? He's probably one of the gazillion people that auditioned for Superman and Batman at some point in the last 20 years. You know, when you hear about how they auditioned, like, it's like J.J. Abrams auditioned Cavill when he was 4 or whatever. Like, So, and I kind of like that, because Nicholas Hoult probably could play Superman. You know, if you jacked him up and all the thing, I think he could. Like, but I like you cast him as Lex. It's kind of like, okay, you're drawing a similarity because they're people of a similar age and look, but you know, you shave his head and stuff, and it's kind of like a classic. Because I've got a real soft spot for Lex Luthor. It's one of my favourite villains. I think it's fantastic. Like comic Lex, I really, really love. It's not just because he's bald. It goes before then. I promise. It goes before then.
I love the
so, you know,
the
I want to see a good on-screen Lex, because fuck me, that one with you know, Social Network guy, the horrible Zack Snyder, Lex Luthor.
Froze there for a minute. Jesse Eisenberg.
Jesse Eisenberg. That was the most deeply wrong-footed version of that character.
Yeah. My favourite's probably... I mean, I love Gene Hackman, but I love Gene Hackman for being Gene Hackman. I think probably Clancy Brown's...
I would be there. We're such simps for the DC animated universe.
Yeah.
But, Clancy Brown as Lex. And he could have done it live action. 100%
oh, God, yeah.
Could have done it. That would have been amazing. But I love that kind of like dry, arrogant, deep voice, that kind of one. But I love the kind of scheming CEO type. Like, let's make him a tech billionaire. It's such a weak take. Like, I hate that.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
it's lazy.
Kind of like, it's lazy. Yeah, it's just such a fucking. Oh yeah, put him in Converse and a fucking denim jacket. It's like, come on.
Well, even making him the sort of petulant, entitled heir to a fortune is again lazy, because it's so surface level. There's nothing to it. It's much better that he's a virtuous person who's self-made, you know, and all these things, but went too far and then got a real chip on his shoulder, because this apparently he sees it as someone who got all this unearned power and privilege and doesn't do it. Apparently doesn't do anything with it apart from save cats from trees and stuff. And it's kind of like that to me. That sends a guy like that utterly mad.
He doesn't understand his kind of his earthy Midwestern sort of honesty. He doesn't get it, because he's like, no, you should be a god, and Superman's like, no, I should be helping grannies cross the road. Like, it's great. It's one of the most brilliant, you know, in terms of modern myths. It's the great kind of villain and hero antagonism. I just love it. I love different versions of Lex. I love the way Grant Morrison wrote Lex. Like, I even like the kind of really wonky old ones where, you know, the kind of 1960s comments where people still say things like, by Odin's beard, just as a way of saying I can't find my keys, or you know what I mean. Everything's super. So yeah, I don't know, that side of things. But the other thing as well, I mean, because this is, keeping in mind, this is the beginning of a broader DCU that James Gunn has had the job of planning out. So he's not directing and writing all of them, but they've finally bought themselves a Kevin Feige, and so many other places have tried to have their own Kevin Feige. Like Fox tried to make Mark Miller their Kevin Feige. There's been all over the place. Right? So they've kind of done that. Again, is it too late though? Because people are probably quite sick of this stuff by now. Like, you know, because me saying I want my Silver Age Superman film, okay, good for me, but it doesn't necessarily. But
Well,
that having been
and
said, you know, original movies are really suffering at the box office at the moment because
all movies are though. I mean, even
true.
these big ones, yeah, they'll post big numbers relative to those, but they're still nowhere near what they ought to be by by modern metrics. So I think, you know, a lot of cinema is really suffering. Really suffering, because I think people are just getting like to get their attention just takes so much more now. So I mean, I don't know. This is because I think it's kind of an origin story type thing as well. Because is it Superman or is it Superman Legacy? I think they ended up. It was supposed to be Superman Legacy, but now they're just calling it Superman. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Which is fine. I kind of think. Kind of Man of Steel should just be called Superman. I don't think we're going to confuse it. I did have a conversation with someone the other day. I think I've done this bit before, but anyway. I can't remember it come up, but I was like, okay, cool. So if you want to watch Halloween, you have to have seen Halloween, but not Halloween, because there's Halloween, then there's Halloween. So Halloween's a sequel to Halloween, but Halloween isn't a sequel to Halloween. Halloween's a reboot of Halloween. But don't worry, because there's Halloween, which is Halloween 2, The Return of Michael Myers, not to be confused with Halloween 2, which is different. So Halloween's a sequel to Halloween, and then there's the other Halloweens that come after Halloween. But as long as you've seen Halloween, you don't have to watch Halloween 2 to watch Halloween. And I think that entire statement was factually correct, but what I just said, if you leave off the numbers, the years at the end, that makes sense. And it's kind of like, do you know what? Let's just call it fucking Superman. I'm glad they did. I'm glad they didn't call it the Superman. You know,
and then that becomes a brand as well, doesn't it? Because then it's your mission statement is the Batman. That's what you're aiming at. You know,
that's its own separate thing. That's separate to this, the Batman, and so is the Joker getting another the Joker.
Oh God, yeah, I know.
Because keeping in mind, the Joker is separate from the Batman, and the Batman is separate from Superman.
Yeah.
So they're all...
it's not called the Joker; it's just called Joker.
Oh, is it called just Joker? Whatever. I love that the second one's called A Folie à Deux because it's the most insanely pretentious thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
It's like oh Jesus! Like what have we become?
Well, I did say this a while ago. I think I said, look, of all the properties, I think you can. Why not lean into the Elseworld stuff, and why not but do it right for God's sake, and don't just go it's a multiverse or any of that shit, you know. But I mean, it's the DCEU had to die off. Unfortunately, it was structured such that there was so many weird deals and things that had to come and go, and you know what I mean, and be disconnected and connected, and
it had to be thrown out. It had to be thrown out. I know the original plan was to kind of course correct with Flash, but come on, it's just been it had been painfully limping. I watched Blue Beetle the other night.
Oh really?
Yeah, and I think that's the final DCEU movie. I didn't hate it. But also I didn't love it. And you're kind of watching this thing going like, well, you know, it's rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, isn't it? Like, this is all fine. I mean, it's the definition of fine. It was fine.
Right.
Like, it made sense. But it was like, fuck, because it's about the Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle, not Ted Kord. So he's got like the kind of magical scarab armor. It's like, fuck, man, this is beat for beat from Iron Man. Like, there are bits of it because it like goes on him, and then there's a bad Blue Beetle guy, and it's like, well, this is Whiplash from. He even looks like Whiplash from Iron Man 2, and then pulls out a whip, and it's like, oh God, but you know, it was the last. But it was colourful and bright and everything, and it was just this course correction.
I started watching Black Adam, and I just couldn't do it. I started watching it ages ago, and I was just like, nah, I just couldn't be bothered to finish it. I got about maybe an hour in. I was like, what? I don't care.
Yeah.
And I don't, and I think that's the problem. I think because every big movie is a superhero movie, and but they don't know what to do because none of them have anything interesting to say because none of them examine anything beyond, you know, action beats and, you know, storyboarding and must have wacky sidekick character, and you know, and it's just like. It's what you can't. But then even, you know, this is the trouble. You've deconstructed, you've reconstructed, you've gone left, you've gone right, you've done up, down, all the things. It's like you've done it now. You've done it. And the trouble is, you've never stuck with one of them long enough to really develop it, not for a long time. And arguably not really. I mean, like, Christopher Reeve and Michael Keaton, they had one, maybe two films in them, really. And that was it. You know, so...
Well, you know, Marvel did its thing, and everyone's tried to copy it, and it was like an amazing hot streak, but it's easy to forget the turds that are in that punch bowl. But there was a time where, like, there'd be 2 Marvel films a year, and they were usually pretty great, like, you know, or interesting in their own right, or at least moving the story forward. There was that kind of period building up to Endgame where everything was moving the story forward, and then it's just been kind of floundering since. And it's like, do you know what? They had a fucking, like, regardless if whether or not you like all of them, I don't, but I, for the most part, enjoy them and like them. In terms of box office and stuff, they had an insane hot streak for 10 years. And the idea that they could just recapture that with, you know, Bank Holiday Man and, you know, and Mineral Water Girl, all these fucking Z-list Marvels that they've kind of upgraded to the top tier, I don't think it's going to happen. And also, just in the general rule of entropy and diminishing returns, there's no way they're clawing that back to what it was. I'm sorry. Like, and I'm here for, I want to see Wolverine and Deadpool. I think it's going to be fun. I like the Loki shows. Thought it was great, both seasons. Bunch of stuff I've watched on their TV that I've liked, but you're not going back to what you had. That was lightning in a bottle, a very big bottle and a lot of lightning. But like the idea they could just turn that back round is madness. I look forward to being proven wrong. As usual, when I say something negative, I don't want that to become a fact. I look forward to being wrong about this. There's no way, right?
I just think it's coupled with a you know, a mass exodus from the cinemas. I think COVID put paid to that. I just think it's you're just going to struggle to get people to go to cinemas now. They're too used to it, and also they've broken it with, you know, stuff comes out before I've even had a chance to countenance getting in my car and going to the cinema. It's like it's going to be on streaming. It's on VOD, and then it's on streaming on its respective platform about a month later. It's like, well, then why am I going to go and do that?
That is the biggest frustration for me, you know, is like I think like I can go see that, but then I'm busy with work. You know, I travel around the country, sometimes around the fucking world, working. So when am I going to get time to go see a movie on my own? And then it's like, oh, it's a VOD. So I go, well, like, okay, I'm going to go, I'll do that. Like, you know, I think like I said before on a previous episode, the last thing I saw was Civil War, which I really, really loved. But that's on, like, so like I watched it with my brother, and then a couple of weeks later, my brother was like, look, I really like that. Do you want to watch it again? I bought it.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, man, I will, but not right now. You know, so yeah, that kind of stuff, and we talked about before, like if you're a family, going out to the cinema is like £120 commitment probably, like, you know, all the rest of it. I see someone the other day was like, my friends took their kids and they were like, yeah, it was fucking 17 quid each for adults. Like £17 each for adults, that's fucking mad. But then again, I'm fun employed being freelance, so I could just go on a fucking Tuesday before 12 and see it for 6 quid or whatever, do you know what I mean? Which doesn't help the quandary of diminishing box office, but here you go, I'm not made of fucking money.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I it's just becoming less and less of an attractive proposition, much as I love seeing things in the cinema and I miss, you know, doing it. But I just think, you know, well, that's a whole other discussion, is to sort of how to fix the broken model of cinema releases. But I think, you know, when is this due out? Is it due out next year, isn't it, this Superman film?
James Gunn, Superman. So we're getting the Creature Commandos one. And again, that sounds like a pretty obscure bit of DC lore that they're turning into a movie. James Gunn, Superman, release date 11th of July 2025. So a year.
There you go.
More than a year
away.
Not
so
much, but
I don't know that things will improve by then, and I do think that the what's due out, and you know, this year it's all legacy sequels and what have you, and many of them are actually being put out by streaming platforms. So I just think, are we pumped for another Superman film? Is a year going to make a difference? Are we all going to be chomping at the bit to see this? I mean,
it's quite numbing, isn't it? It's quite numbing. I don't know if it's just we're older, you know, but it's quite numbing. Yeah, we are. Yeah, that's just, again, that's how linear time works. But I don't know if we're just fucking cynical old fucks. But I'm like, I don't know. But we've all been overexposed to this stuff. Kids have been overexposed to this stuff. Like, when we were kids, they didn't make this kind of shit. It was very off-trend. And then when it started happening around Batman Begins time, it's kind of like, yeah, they're adapting this. Oh, this is exciting. And now it's a bit like I talked to my friend's daughter about The Simpsons, and she was just like, this is like the worst show on television. And I was like, yeah, but it wasn't once. But if you're 12 and you're watching season 58 and it's like, the Simpsons are going to Belgium. Dad, you can't just eat lots of mayonnaise. Oh, Morris, I'm eating lots of mayonnaise. Yeah, like, you're going to go, this is the shittest thing I've ever seen. And then I've got to go like, no, look, like, between like 1988 and 1995, it was one of the maddest hot streaks of comedy writing ever. I don't want to listen to that. You don't want to hear me say that. I was wearing an onion on my belt, which was a style at the time. Like,
but again, that was sort of referencing things that we would find funny that I don't know that they would now. The current generation of kids aren't going to grow up with the same reference points as us, and it's fun. It's weird to me seeing people doing like piss-takey videos of what news broadcasts were like in the mid-noughties, and you go, really? That's you're going back there, are you?
Yeah, well, this is it. Well, but that being said, you know, like when we were watching Back to the Future in 1993, it was only released 8 years ago, whereas Iron Man now was released 15 years ago. So the gaps are bigger. Like it's 2009.
No, it's 2008,
and
so
worse.
You'd be talking. Yeah,
16 years ago.
16 years ago.
So it's worse, right? I fucking saw Jesus Christ, I saw an advert for the South Park movie Sing Along, and I was like, I'm interested, talk to me. And then it was like, celebrating the 25th anniversary, and I was just like, oh God, oh Jesus Christ. So, you know, keeping in mind, even as if you're a young kid now, and I know a lot of, so I've noticed that my friends' kids, the boys in particular, they fucking love Spider-Man, and there's this thing called Spidey and His Amazing Friends, which is like a toddler show about Spider-Man, or Disney Plus or something. Them watching Iron Man is like us watching Jaws or Star Wars when we were kids.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I mean, if you think about it now, if you were born, I always use James Bond as a touch point, but if you were born when GoldenEye came out, you'll be 30 next year.
My brother in Christ. My brother in Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just us lamenting our age. But, you know,
yeah.
Keeping on track is the kind of way you're trying to get kids interested in this stuff. They've been saturated in it their whole lives. They were born during this. So why should they watch another fucking, you know, bin bag man or whatever fucking...
Well, and also we lived through a period where it was kind of like our Superman, for argument's sake, you know, it's like the best, the one was Christopher Reeve, right? End of the 78 or whatever. You know, we were coming to it probably getting on for 20 years later. You know, by the time Superman Returns rolls around, it's like then we're into the era of CGI, and that was when things, I mean, it didn't, but it could get a lot better. And, you know, and so it's kind of like that was the exciting thing. That's what kind of jazzed up superhero movies of that period. But now that's all been done. We can do anything we want with a superhero, anything. Like, and so it means nothing in a weird way. It's kind of like, unless you're going to tell better stories, it's just going to be like more of the same smashy crashy dipshit whatever.
Well, and you know, endless variations upon the same thing, and like we've adapted with, you know, it's like everything's been adapted now. You can, you know, and then there's been remakes of adaptations and so on and so on. You know, we've already had the reboot of Hellboy that didn't do well. You know, like stuff that to us doesn't seem that long ago. It was actually literally a lifetime to some people ago. So I don't know. It's just this. Have you ever heard of the Have you ever heard of the grey goo hypothesis?
No.
It's a theoretical scenario. So I sometimes do work for the Centre for the Study of Existential Risk at Cambridge, which I think I might have told you before. And so I do video for them. And the Centre for this, they're called CSER for short, the Centre for the Study of Existential Risk. It's a Cambridge University department which studies like apocalyptic scenarios, so asteroid strikes, nuclear war and stuff like that. One of their things is called the grey goo scenario. I'm going somewhere with this. Some people know. The grey goo scenario is if a nanobots came out of control and the only thing they could do was replicate themselves, on a long enough timeline, everything would become grey goo, because they would just every matter, because the idea is that nanobots on a molecular level could reassemble individual atoms. If one got out of control and started replicating itself, it would be a matter of time until everything turned to grey goo. and the entertainment landscape is starting to feel like grey goo a little bit. It's just this utter white noise of like, you go into your streaming service, you're kind of like, fuck, I've got 9 of these, and there's like this. There are 100 things with Batman in them. Like, if you were to look on the various places where one can watch things containing Batman, that I can list off probably 10 actors that have played Batman in the last 10 years, and that's not even it. Like, there's loads more. Like, and it's just a kind of white noise. It's a sea of this shit, and it's kind of like we all got the monkey paw wish. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, when I was 20, it's kind of like, I wish there were more serious adaptations of superhero films. It's like, no, not like that, please. And they're just everywhere.
I mean, yeah, basically, and that's why I just think the thing to do is to just leave it. Just leave it. I know they won't. They can't. These things are worth too much to them. But I just think, I mean, they're sort of doing it with James Bond. They're not doing anything with that, and I think that's a good thing.
They are. They're quite good at staying their hand, aren't they? Because I think Barbara Broccoli kind of is able to keep the figurative dick in its pants in the business pants there, because they really kind of breathe and take their time. I just had to look because someone will say the term grey goo hypothesis was coined by American engineer Eric Drexler in his book Engines of Creation, because someone will go like, you didn't credit it. Anyway. I think James Bond's the outlier there. I think they're quite good at like not, because they take their time, I think. Before we finish, are you aware, and I'll make this quick because we're wrapping up, are you aware that there's a 3-part animated adaptation of Crisis on Infinite Earths currently happening?
No.
Okay, so it's the first 2 parts are on streaming. You can pay to watch them. I watched the first part, and I was like, oh, cool. This hints at being kind of crazy and wacky. I'll watch it. And I was like, yeah, that's all right. I waited for the second part to come along, and I sat around on my own the other night. I saw it was on streaming. I was like, wicked. I'll watch the second part of Crisis on Infinite Earths, because the third part is going to have Kevin Conroy's last performance of Batman, and Mark Hamill's in it, and they've got, I can't remember the voice of Batman Beyond is in it, Terry McGinnis, and it's his original voice and stuff like that. Yeah. So I was kind of like, cool, I'm kind of on board for this too. But the second part was one of the worst things I've ever seen. It was appallingly boring and dreadful. It was just unbelievably slow, holding pattern crap. And and I will watch the third one because now I'm in the sunk cost fallacy. So there you go. But yes, sorry for this really quite incredibly dour episode on ostensibly about James Gunn's upcoming Superman film, but in reality about Duncan and I facing our own mortality. How can you remind me how we wrap these up? What are we saying? We're saying like, subscribe, comment.
Yeah, well, you know,
stuff.
Certainly, if this is your first time here, thank you for sticking around to the end and listening to us talk about James Gunn's Superman film. I must say that again, James Gunn's Superman film. Thank you, SEO. But no, thank you for sticking around. And if this was of any interest, service, or otherwise value, please do consider liking and/or subscribing.